Hey guys, you're watching Let's Talk About Prepping. And yes, I have been slacking pretty hardcore for a few days. I've been busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking competition. Let me tell you, I wish that this was an ass-kicking competition. I wish that most of these things were an honest-to-God ass-kicking competition. Hey, Westwind Survival, how you doing? Glad you could drop in. I'm just going to have a little live chat here, have a little discussion about why I've been so busy that I can't even make a single damn YouTube video, and see who shows up to chat a little bit. I was just telling, for anybody who's rewatching later on, been trying to sleep for 3 hours. Well, let's see if I can put you to sleep. It's a story of intrigue, so might not put you to sleep. I don't know. Anyways, why I've been so busy. As everybody who's watched the last couple of videos knows, pretty recently I learned that my dad was going to need open heart surgery. We didn't know about this a year ago. Yeah, I hear you there. I've been getting a little bit of that stress insomnia lately. So a few months ago, while trying to diagnose some of my dad's chronic issues, he deals with chronic pain, connective tissue issues, which means joints, ligaments, things like that. Constantly inflamed, constantly in pain. A lot of it seems to stem from earlier issues like being in car accidents, having back trauma, but just continues to get worse. For a while, he's been nearly bedridden from pain and medication. So in trying to diagnose this, we learn that much of it may stem from heart complications, which are due to a genetic fault in the heart valve, where most people's heart valves are tricuspid, which means that they have 3 different parts that open up like this. My father's, at least the one valve that needed replaced, was bicuspid, meaning it just opens in the 2 flaps rather than having 3 that all come together, which allows for a greater efficiency in flow. So my father, and perhaps some of myself or my siblings, may have this genetic fault where our hearts have a valve that is not as efficient in allowing as much flow through. Hey, Uncle Al, how you doing? Just discussing what's been going on with me lately, why I've fallen off the radar. So what this means is that at this valve, behind it, there's not ideal pressure. Yep, I'm a little buzzed myself, Uncle Al. Been doing paperwork and drinking a little bit while I do that. We'll get to that in a minute. So when your heart valve is not at peak performance, it allows blockage to build up behind it. And so while my dad is pretty healthy for his age, he hasn't abused his heart, and it's not taken a lot of the damage that you might expect from someone who's abused their heart. He developed these blockages because of the fault in his heart valve. And so he required open heart surgery to replace the valve with a flesh valve, and to do a couple of bypasses using some of his own blood vessel to bypass the heart where there was some blockage caused by the valve issues. So needless to say, that was tense, scary. While it is supposedly a pretty routine procedure, it's, horrifying to have someone essentially dead on the table while that's going on. So I have that going on, and it was not anticipated a few months ago, just something that popped up and started happening. But we got through it. My dad's home. He's in recovery, didn't have to go to a rehab facility, which everyone's very happy for, and he's doing well. It's a very scary, very tense situation. He went through what is, I guess, commonly called ICU psychosis, which is honestly quite terrifying, especially if, like in the case of my mother, you're not properly warned that this may happen. But it is not unlike witnessing somebody who may have had a stroke. Now, if you've been properly warned about it, which I was, thanks to Hooples, who, because I discussed that this was going on, let me know that that may happen. He gave me just enough warning to know enough to be able to tell my mother that my father was probably okay, but that he was experiencing some of the most severe side effects of having a bypass operation. Very scary, very tense situation. But it is past now. But I share that because in the midst of all this, and what has caused most of my inability to make videos and just general stress and workload is the fact that amongst all this, a couple of my associates at work have taken it upon themselves to work against me and try to push me out of my workplace. Not something that I'm unfamiliar with. Just sort of my position when I come into a place, I end up having somebody working against me. And it's something that I've tried to perfect the art of getting ahead of. And I've done pretty well so far. But for whatever reason, I've developed a couple of people who have a pretty powerful grudge against me and who are very ingrained in the place where I work. I work in a pizza place, which is pretty high output and demands quite a bit out of the people who work there. It's not a very high-end restaurant when you consider larger cities, but it's one of the better ones in the place that I live, and demands quite a bit of respect among some of the other, some of the people who go there. But as is the case in most restaurants, there is a very cutthroat environment behind the scenes. I tend to stay out of most of it by simply keeping my head down and doing more than my fair share. But for whatever reason, and I've got my suspicions, I have a couple or a few people who have taken it upon themselves to very personally push me out of there. And because they have the ear of the owners so far, they've succeeded. I'm not going to go through with this. Now, I am doing my exit interview, and for the past couple weeks, I've been on the job trail, gotten and begun training on another job. So that's the source of most of my busyness, is dealing with my father's open heart surgery, being in the hospital as much as possible, while dealing with the necessity of finding new employment to seamlessly go into a new job without having to worry about the stress of dealing with these guys who've taken it upon themselves to work against me. Now, I have a lot of reason for for having done this, but just want to explain to you guys why it's been a few days since I've been keeping up with my regular workload. Really been bugging me because honestly, I'd much rather be here making videos and chatting with you guys, responding to comments as much as I usually like to do. But I really just found it necessary to make these changes in my life. And I've been doing what's necessary to take care of that. For a couple reasons, I felt that I couldn't really talk about it. So that's why I sort of dropped off the radar and just sort of took care of all this stuff. And I'm sure a lot of you will understand that. Been a very busy time, but it's definitely looking up, and I'm pretty happy with where things are going. Going to be going back to school, going to be working in an environment where I'm pretty happy and don't have to worry about feeling like I'm getting taken advantage of. So it's all up from there. And from a prepper's perspective, I'd really point out that being debt free and ahead of my current necessities has really been helpful. I have always made sure to own the car that I own and to not have payments that I can't cover at least a month or two in advance. So, yep, thanks, Wayne. I appreciate that. I know that most everyone here appreciates that. So, I haven't been really too worried about it. You know, it's been so busy that between getting up, either at first being on the job trail or just working both jobs to seamlessly integrate all this stuff, by the end of the day, the only thing that I have motivation for is going to the gym to burn off some steam. And after that, I have to make myself go to sleep. Whenever I get, stressed out or I have a high workload where I just know I have a lot of stuff to get done, my desire for sleep drops down to dangerous levels. I can spend a surprising long amount of time with just a couple hours of sleep each night, and I have to make myself avoid that. So sounds like you can understand that. So anyways, that's where I've been, just trying to take care of things. Needless to say, it's been very stressful and made me somewhat unhappy having to deal with all of this stuff in the midst of my father's situation and just having somebody threaten my livelihood like that. But trying to stay nice and zen about it all, and I think I'm doing well. I'm trying to format my exit interview and all that in a very constructive fashion. It's actually pretty interesting because what I plan to go to school for, aside from a variety of rather practical prepper things like welding, for instance, and other things that I just think would be very good for a prepper who talks on YouTube and just for anybody in general. In the meantime, what I would like to do is actually be a business efficiency consultant. This isn't my first time being in a situation where people who were already there have done what they could to push me out because I threatened their position. Not necessarily because I would ever want to take their job, because usually managing in a restaurant is a losing game, but because if you raise the bar of workload, you're going to have a couple enemies who like to stay easy and lazy. So it's sort of become a game for me to try to get ahead of the people who are going to try to push me out and gain the ear of the management to where they recognize that I'm able to help them rather than have them believe the things that are said about whoever the intermediate managers don't want to have around. So I have sometimes imagined being the kind of person who gets hired on as a secret employee in a cheesy way, sort of like the Extreme Kitchen Makeover reality shows that you might see. But it is surprising how many restaurants are so poorly run because the managers have successfully convinced the owners that they are running things as well as things could be run, while meanwhile mishandling operations. And so I actually do plan on going to school for the credentials to end up helping consult people on why their restaurants are running inefficiently and they cannot figure out why. So I'm actually trying to frame this as an exercise of what they could possibly do to stop losing people like me who, not blowing my own horn, but I feel like I'm a valuable asset to a place like this. So, rather than giving them the room to feel like I'm just butthurt and trying to get back at the people who I feel like are jerks to me, I'm really trying to set this up as what they can do to identify the problems with their management, because I'm really am a strong believer in the fact that leadership rather than management is one of the most important assets that a person can have, both nowadays and as a prepper. In fact, this has really given me a lot of material to want to share with you guys about why duplicity, having people who are two-faced, who will talk nice and act like they think you're the best person in the world to your face, but then go around lying about people, lying about the things that you say about people and trying to turn them against you, and lying about their judgment of you to the people who matter, is something that could come around to bite preppers in the rear end in a lot of different situations, especially situations where preppers sort of plan to rule with an iron fist. It's important to appreciate the fact that it is a very common nature of humans to gossip, to turn people against each other, and to use social means to overcome others before they even realize that there is a threat to themselves. Now, like I said, this is not something that I was surprised by. I was simply surprised by the fact that these two had developed such a powerful grudge against me without me knowing it. It's just common nature for these kinds of gossipy social games to be played in a restaurant environment. And it's definitely something that you have to be on top of if you want to last long in that kind of environment. Needless to say, I'm not too sad about getting out. My next job is much more relaxed when it comes to that kind of thing. So I'm pretty happy with how things have gone. I don't think that I ever would have really ended up going back to school the way that I want to where I was. And I just think that's going to be a great change. It's definitely going to free me up to be on YouTube a lot more than I was at this other position. So I'm viewing it as a net plus, and I'm really trying to frame this as an opportunity to help them if they want to hear it. If not, that's fine. But just trying to move on and be good about it all. So thanks, Bob. Appreciate that. So that's where I've been. That's what I've been up to. Just dealing with a lot of work stuff, working 2 jobs, being on the job trail while trying to be in the hospital, renovating the home, not too much, but as much as possible, sanitizing it so that it's ready for my dad to be home with his somewhat limited mobility after having an open heart surgery, and just dealing with people having it out for me, trying to remain calm, like Bob says, stay as sane as I can. So I'm hoping that I'm at the point where I'm going to be able to start actually putting out content in a regular fashion, not just live streams where I chat about what's going on lately, but maybe some videos about prepping. Who knows? Maybe we'll be able to talk about prepping soon. So anyways, that's about all the update I have on what's been going on lately. It's been hectic. I'm sure that I could continue to go on and on about it, but just wanted to get a little bit of a live chat out there for you guys and let you know what's been going on lately. Now that things have moved along enough that I don't think I have to worry about OPSEC in this particular situation. I don't think anybody's necessarily watching who isn't on my side, but you never know. Anyways, appreciate you guys all hanging in there for that. If anybody's around, I'm happy to chat now. It is 2:40 a.m. here, and I think I might be about ready to catch a few Z's before mid 2-week notice exit interview tomorrow, where I present my pretty slick little text report that I've typed up here. Went to the bar here at midnight and had a couple shots of whiskey, typed up how managers can undermine workplace values. Pretty nifty little report about, it's really constructive, actually. It's a nice little piece of paper that they could even hand to their managers as a training device. Man, I'm just such a cool guy. Anyways, I typed this thing up to as a thinly veiled explanation of all the things that go on here that have driven me out, but mostly constructive advice for how to get their managers to not keep making people quit, because it's a pandemic problem in many restaurants and definitely here. It's true, Bob. It's not necessarily the drama, but it's a mechanism for pushing out people who threaten you. Hey, David, how you doing? Yeah, Wayne, it's, once I recognized that people who had enough authority to threaten my position did actually have it out for me. The only reason I didn't walk out at the moment was to line up a paycheck. And I've made that clear to the owners, who are pretty surprised by the situation. They're in a lot of restaurants, you have this situation where the owners rely on the managers to be an intermediary. They often end up identifying too much with the managers, and the managers take advantage of that situation. And they know that they will not get fired because the owners will side with them over butthurt millennial people who come and go. So there's a lot of room for owners to not realize that their managers are driving out the people who work hard enough to threaten their position, and just being enough of a jerk to make all the other regular people who come through give up and go somewhere else. Yeah, it's a family restaurant, but it's not necessarily a problem that's unique to family restaurants. Just anybody who wants to feel like they're friends with the employees. There's a fine line between being friends with your employees and being friendly with your employees. I think it's great to be, I don't know, it is a very fine line, but at some point you need to separate profit from identifying with somebody and wanting them to not necessarily be in trouble for stuff or lose their job with you. I'm not saying that people even need to get fired, but there is a vast separation between how things are going and how things are recognized to be going. And as soon as I have people working against me is when I start watching out for myself. And as soon as I see that there's nothing that can be changed about the situation is when I cut ties. So I'm in the process of communicating all that with the owners and doing my best to be constructive with them. But it has been my understanding from the beginning of this, my employment here, that they do view these people as, if not family, then people who do not do wrong. So as soon as I recognized that they had it out for me, I did what I needed to do to take care of myself. This was actually the first job that I applied to whenever I moved to this town. And I've been happy enough to simply stick it through here, but I never actually planned to stay this long. I always planned to make the move that I've already currently made and get a job where I would be well suited to go to school again, which has been my goal because I have a family member who is willing to pay for my schooling. So it has mostly been my own procrastination that's kept me from returning to school, which I haven't done since I graduated high school a while ago. So this has actually been a blessing in surprise, a blessing in surprise, if you will, because I probably would have just stuck in there and kept working in a job where I wasn't really as happy as I wanted to be and not going to school like I should be. So it's a good thing. So cheers to that. Tomorrow I have my exit interview, and from there on out should be pretty stress-free compared to how things have been. Definitely needed to keep things under the radar so that everybody doesn't know that I'm planning to leave and potentially have the ability to get me fired before I want my paychecks to cut off. So I'm at a point where I've got my next paycheck coming in. It's feeling pretty good. I'm going to have a nice little exit interview tomorrow, work out the next couple weeks. If that's how it goes, things should be great. And we can all look forward to resuming, hopefully, some business as usual. Wayne, if I can. If I get all my paperwork in and everything lines up well, I'd like to at least start some basic general education. It's been over 10 years since I graduated, so they're definitely going to want me to prove that I can still do the maths and the readings and the things like that. But I'm looking forward to it. I actually, after a while, you start missing the regimented nature of school, just having people who tell you what's going to happen that day. I'm still going to need to work. I'm still going to need to be an adult. But it's actually pretty exciting to think about sitting in a class and learning and stuff like that. And I think it'll even give me a lot of opportunities for the channel, because I'm going to be meeting young people who are excited about life and who might be interested in this kind of stuff, or doing things that could benefit someone who's making a YouTube channel. So I think it's going to be good. I'm going to be going in for, like I said, general education. I'm going to be gearing towards business leadership, business efficiency, which I think is something that benefits a prepper, because most of the enterprises that we talk about after collapse type situation, most group enterprises like agriculture or whatever, are things where a good background on how to lead people, how to lead an efficient group are pretty important. And in the meantime, it's going to give me the ability to have a skill set where I'm not beholden to people who employ me. But what I'd really like to do is end up consulting people and helping them avoid the situations that I often find myself in when working for other people in a lot of different environments, but also avoiding those situations myself. But also, I'd like to do some welding trade school while I'm going to school there. The local community school has a lot of different facilities, so I'm going to try a few different things. I'm going to get a few different skill sets that will be valuable, both nowadays, whether or not things collapse or just continue going into some kind of technological future paradise that we all know is coming with absolutely no problems. So anyways, that's about what I got for you guys so far. Always watch your back. You really never know what someone is saying or who secretly has taken offense to some unknown slight. I might know what I said that got back around to them that basically made them decide to drive me out. But you know, it's the kind of thing that I often do think about when people say, well, it's my stuff. They're just going to have to deal if they want to live here and have my stuff. A lot of people would be surprised by how secretly some people are able to turn many people against you. Over the course of the last few weeks, these people have almost successfully lied about things that I have said to other people and turned them against me. And it is only because I recognize this and gone up to them proactively and said, I want you to know that if anybody has told you that I've been talking shit about you, it is almost certainly not true, because they are trying to turn people against me. That is the specific phrase that I've had to say to multiple of my coworkers who were formerly my friends and who I recognize have started looking at me a little bit differently, because these people have gone around to turn people against me. Now, it is a very cold and calculated process that most people would not credit somebody else with doing. It's amazing that a grown man of almost, or at least the age of 40 in a couple different cases, will go around doing these kinds of things as an agreed upon process between the two of them to drive somebody out. But it is something that happens. It is something that's common, and it's something that you need to watch for in situations where mutiny might be a thing, because it's not a joke that you will find 6 people allied against you before you realized you were anything but popular and appreciated for everything that you do. People will take your hard work as a sign of condescension towards them and a sign that you feel you're better than them. And in situations where they feel their lives are on the line, or that you do things that could put their lives on the line simply because you happen to have the food, they will gain a large following before you have any idea that you're anything but the savior of the group. And so when people say that being the velvet glove dictator of a group will get you killed in the night, that's not bravado, and it's not just fantasy. It's something that happens on a day-to-day basis in a lot of work environments, and it's something that you need to take heed of and appreciate, because that is only going to get worse when more than just a minimum wage plus paycheck is on the line. So definitely something to think about, because the duplicity of humanity is an ugly and common thing. And in these situations that we talk about here, it's only going to be exponentially worse. Night, David. Thanks for dropping in. I appreciate you being here. You have a good night. Yeah, Wayne, you know, it's not unique to restaurants. I've dealt with it in every industry that I've been in. Actually, I wouldn't say that I dealt with it in the gun industry, which was also the machining industry. But I'm sure it exists in some parts of it. But largely, people the guys that I worked with enjoyed their work. They were invested in it. And we were all too busy running CNC machines to care about what anybody else was doing, because we all loved what we were doing, and who doesn't like dealing with guns? But like you said, in the military, in pretty much any walk of business or human endeavor, people work against each other. It's just a matter of social human nature to use the social machine against each other. And so it's just something to appreciate. It's something to pay attention to. And it's often something that goes unappreciated. We don't talk about the skills of getting ahead of this kind of thing, of recognizing when someone's turning other people's opinions against you. I'm not trying to brag, but I have become at least adept at recognizing when this kind of thing is going on. And it's the only reason that this time around, I managed to get a job, get a paycheck going, put in my 2 weeks notice, and so far successfully keep the current senior management appreciating my opinion. Because in so many of these situations, the other party manages to co-opt your opinion by convincing the owners or the senior management that you yourself are taking advantage of them, or are, for whatever reason, outside the loop. So far, I've managed to maintain the constructive relationship with them, to where they appreciate that I'm not just reacting emotionally. I've maintained an extremely professional relationship with them, and I think that they will appreciate the reasons that I have chosen to leave. And I might be able to actually deliver a communication that is more than just, oh, Tyler's butthurt and leaving, which to me will be a pretty good victory. So, but it's something that people deal with no matter where they are. It's just one of the ugly parts of human nature, but it is a common reaction that a lot of people have to feeling threatened in a social work or production type environment. So definitely something to think about. It's something that I have planned to talk about. It's basically the background of any discussion of leadership that we have on this channel. If we're talking about why leadership is important, it's more or less boiling down to how not to get yourself killed because somebody convinced everybody else that you are no good for the group. I know that most people will say that's not necessary. There's no reason for anybody to think that I need to be killed, but it is just amazing. I hope that most of you would be surprised that I've been framed for stealing from a company before, directly just taking money out of the till. Now, I should have gotten out of there when I recognized that there was drug abuse, like severe, hard drug abuse going on in the place. But I managed to turn a blind eye to what other people were doing. It's a restaurant. This was a while back. But I have now learned the lesson to recognize when somebody may have the motive to do that kind of thing, to tell someone, well, if you're missing money, maybe you should look at Tyler. So that's the main reason that I try to get ahead of this kind of stuff. But it is mostly what I want to tell you, that it is surprising what people will do just to get rid of somebody else. And in a survival situation, it's only going to be that much worse. Exactly, Wayne. Well, in a life and death situation, you would need to be. And in a life and death situation, you need, this would only, I'm often brought back, as cheesy as it is, and I actually do plan on doing a proper video where I sort of analyze not necessarily the fictional situation, but for those of you who've watched The Walking Dead, the situation between Shane and Rick, where Shane just develops, he's convinced that Rick is no good and decides to work against him no matter how many times he behaves as though he is on the same team. It just epitomizes the mentality that some people will have, that they will definitely have, that the stakes are too high for an agreement to disagree. You can't agree to disagree when the fact that someone's wrong means death for everyone. In a lot of these situations, we need to appreciate that if we are the leader of a group, other people who disagree with us will likely see the disagreement as grounds for a life and death challenge, which will likely not happen on fair footing where you know about it. Exactly, Wayne. The best way to maintain popular support is to be morally unassailable and completely transparent. So there's absolutely no question that you are the best option. And it is amazing how many people are unaware of that. How many people who want their restaurant or any business, any endeavor to be successful, how many people are willing to overlook the fact that there are things within the system that are undermining that completely. And I believe that also applies to a lot of preppers who believe that they will simply be, that they don't have to worry about someone saying, look at him, he's riding it easy on top of all the food that he simply stored. Any of us could have stored food, but we were living our lives. Blah, blah, blah. There's any number of things that a person could say to convince others that you don't deserve to be a leader and that you either need to be locked up to show you your place or taken care of. If there's been a lot of death, people are not going to necessarily have a problem with adding you to the list. Draw fire without, yeah, exactly. I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I worked very hard. It's just a matter of personal preference, if you will. It's the way that I have been trained to be. It's the way that I've been conditioned to be throughout multiple job positions where it was expected of the management to be to always be the absolute hardest worker. And I don't feel don't feel right not just working as hard as I can. So there is no question in my mind that I'm a valuable asset to a place that I do that for. So when I'm told that I'm being worked against, that I'm, that the people whose opinions matter are being told that I am not a hard worker, it's a pretty easy equation. And I do my best to maintain the ability to demonstrate my worth to the people who matter. But in a work environment or in a survival situation, you will not necessarily be able to control the opinions of others around you. So it's important to do everything that you can to make sure that what they do see of you is above the board and immaculate, because that's the only way, this is the only thing that people have. And you need to be proactive about your social interactions with others. One of my main faults here has been keeping to myself and being quite surly. I'm probably, I would say that I am one of the people who looks grumpy if you don't know me. Now, I try to make sure that the people who I respect and want to have a good opinion of me are aware that I'm a very nice person and that I value their opinions. But aside from that, it's really been a learning curve for me to realize that I have what some people have told me is resting serial killer face. If I'm not actively smiling, I look like I want to kill you, apparently. So that's something that I need to work on because it's definitely easy. And in my process of socializing with my coworkers the way that I should have been, they've made it, I've heard multiple times that they thought I hated them simply because I have a very serious or stern expression and I work hard. And so they simply assume that I think everybody else is crap. I think some people are crap, but I don't think everybody's crap. So it's definitely important to maintain your social interactions with those around you and to be aware of them. Because if I hadn't recognized the change in the way that these people looked at me and gone up to each one of them and said, I just want you to know that if you heard something about what I said about you, there's a good chance that my words were twisted because I appreciate you. If I hadn't done that proactively because I simply knew that that's the kind of upkeep you need to do when someone's going around and twisting your words to other people, those people would have continued to have a sour opinion of me and in a life and death situation, maybe been part of some kind of lynch mob. So yeah, you don't want to be the governor or Negan. You just want to be on top of that kind of stuff. You don't want to have these kinds of surprises. And I'm really lucky that I got the warning that I did. Something that the book Meditations on Violence, a comparison of martial arts training and real world violence by Sergeant Roy Miller tells us is that a threat is a gift. And I've been thinking that this whole time. These guys really, really gave me the telegraph, the time. They've been trying to choke out my hours and giving me the time to go find a different job and train into it. So a threat, having people who say that they're working against you, that is a gift. And if somebody ever says in any kind of human endeavor that you're in, that they have it out for you, do not hesitate. Do not take any time to try to work with them or work things out. That is a gift to you to begin to act in a way that is beneficial to only you. That applies to workplace drama or violence or anything. If someone demonstrates or dictates to you verbally that they have it out for you or that they have an intent which is bad for you, that is your trigger to move. And I'm pretty proud of myself because in the past, usually I've been the reacting and not being proactive to these kinds of things. So I feel pretty lucky to have recognized it. And, I'm in a situation where I think is pretty good. So. Exactly, Wayne. Hate and discontent are contagious, and that's part of what I've written into this report that I plan to hand to them. I've really gone back and forth on how I want to handle this originally, because the way that a couple of the official reprimands that I've received have gone, I very nearly walked out a couple times because of the unprofessional and immature way that things have gone on around here. The main reason that I did not is for my own personal reasons. The other reason is that I do have a level of respect personally because I've had personal discussion with the senior management owners of the place. And I want them to know that this is not an emotional decision. I don't want there to be any room for them to think that I'm simply running away butthurt. I want to be able to dictate to them the things that are the problem. And so that's the reason that I've taken my own personal time to write a report for people who I really feel have already gotten what they need to get out of me, is to demonstrate that kind of thing. Specifically this, if you let gossip and discord continue, it becomes rampant and it becomes toxic to the degree where there's no getting it back. In a social group where things have become that way, I don't know that there is really a feasible way for any non-expert to repair that kind of damage to a social group. So one of the most important prepper skills may be psychology, group psychology, and the ability to keep people from developing a backstabbing, gossipy, nasty environment where the only solution is for people to suddenly all quit at the same time. So I don't know. It's definitely a question. It's a social experiment, and it's one that I'm in the middle of. So I guess we'll see how it goes in the next little while with me trying to make this a productive transition. So we'll see. Anyways, Naylor's wearing off. All right. Well, good night, Uncle Al. Thanks for dropping in. I think I might go ahead and log off. I pretty much spat out what I've got to say, and got a couple things to do before I let myself nod off. So I hope you do end up getting to bed there before too long, Wayne. Hope you catch some sleep. I definitely know what it's like to not be able to. I spent most of 2016 mostly not sleeping at all. Very little bits. But yep, I think I'm going to go ahead and head out so I can end up resting a little bit and getting up and trying to start to produce some content that's geared towards videos and not just random live stream chats of personal updates. Thanks, Wayne. I'm doing pretty okay. I'm actually pretty impressed with my body for not wearing down on the stress and all the work so much as it has before in the past. So feel pretty lucky with that. I'm coping well with what's all going on. Just mostly bumming me out that my YouTube life has suffered because of it. YouTube is one of the more enjoyable parts of my life. I really enjoy doing all this stuff and interacting with you guys. But at the same time, when it comes to some of what's been going on, it's one of the things that's had to be reduced a little bit. But I really appreciate you guys. Really appreciate you for being here. And I hope that you can expect to see a little bit more coming here soon. So thanks, Wayne, and everybody else for dropping in, being here tonight. Hope to see more of you soon. Everybody, hope you're well and stay safe out there. Have a good night, Wayne. Rest well, if you can.